Let's start with this, a log entry from a journey that has already gone completely off the rails. It's about a man who was so sure of himself, so in control, all of it built on an illusion that's about to come crashing down.
All right, let's get into it. Today, we're not just looking at some story, we are charting a course right into a psychological storm. We're following a doomed captain's final log as his whole reality, his very sense of self, gets torn apart by the deep.
So, where does our captain's story begin? Well, it starts from a place of absolute, rock-solid certainty. He truly believes his mind is this untouchable fortress, a kingdom ruled by pure logic, sailing through a world he thinks he has all figured out.
And his ship, the Morning Star, that wasn't just wooden sails. No, it was basically his ego made real. It stood for this belief that his conscious mind, what he calls the absolute I, was the unquestioned master of reality. You know, the idea that everything can be planned for, charted, and overcome.
And this right here, this lays out the central conflict perfectly. But look, this isn't some simple story of good versus evil. On one side, you have the absolute I, that's the captain's ego, his perfect fortress of logic. And on the other, the non-I, that's the shadow self, all the ancient primal stuff he's pushed down into the basement. It's his sovereign yes being hunted by a final, undeniable no.
And you know, a fortress like that, it's destined to fall. The Sargasso Rift isn't some spot on a map, it's a psychic break. It's that moment where the crushing weight of the deep, all that stuff in the basement, just smashes right through the hull of his perfect logic. It proves his neat, orderly world was never real to begin with.
But when a fortress like that collapses, it does more than just leave a wreck. It creates an opening. It invites something new to come aboard. Or maybe something that was ancient and there all along, just waiting for the door to get kicked in.
And you can see that shift happening right here. The captain's brass astrolabe, the very symbol of his rational, orderly navigation, it starts to transform. It becomes a channel for pure chaos. It doesn't just break, it starts glowing with this horrifying new energy, fed by everything he tried to deny.
Now, this kind of catastrophic moment actually has a name, onstas. It's this idea of a shock or a jolt. This isn't just random destruction, you see. It's the friction, the necessary catalyst the soul needs to finally break free from its own comfortable illusions and face what's really going on underneath.
And here's where it all leads. That tool of logic literally fuses to his skin, and with it comes the honest guest. But this isn't some monster from the outside. No, this guest is the spirit who denies. It's the raw, undeniable truth of the captain's own inner darkness, and now it's holding his hand.
So, with his ego completely shattered, the journey has to go somewhere else. It stops being about navigating stars or thinking abstract thoughts. It becomes this visceral, biological freefall, deep into the very architecture of his own body.
And this is where that loss of identity becomes terrifyingly real and physical. The log describes a complete dismantling of his humanity. His blood thins into a saline ichor, the same cold essence as the sea. He's stripped of his warmth, his compassion, everything, and becomes this predatory creature, a water vampire.
So the big takeaway here is that he's completely stripped of this illusion that he was a mind just piloting a body. He's forced to realize that he is a body, a biological thing driven by these deep animal rhythms. And his new purpose is just horrifyingly simple. All life is just water waiting to be stolen. Now, you might think this is all just random decay, but it's not. This deconstruction is a systematic process. It's like a dark ritual conducted by some indifferent cosmic force, a kind of inverted communion.
And what's lighting up this grim operating theater? It's not our sun, it's a hollow sun. This is the light of the sea stormer. You can almost think of it as a symbolic dead father, representing the cold, indifferent laws of the universe. It's not a light that gives life. It's a cold, analytical light that exists only to take things apart. And we can actually see this dark surgery happening in 4 clear steps. First, you silence that inner critic, that voice of judgment. Then you peel away the protective ego like it's a shell. Third, you expose the soul's patterns for what they are, just repetitive loops. And finally, you open the floodgates and let the raw, primal energy just wash over everything. And this all leads to the journey's climax, the inverted Eucharist. A normal communion is about washing away sin, right? This is the exact opposite. The captain doesn't try to get rid of his inner monster. He willingly consumes it.
He integrates his own rot and makes it a part of him.
So, after all of that, what's left? What's the final state of this transformation? Because this journey, it doesn't end with salvation or a return to the light. It ends with the birth of a totally new and pretty haunting way of being.
So he comes back to the world, and from the outside, you probably couldn't tell anything had changed. He looks the same. But inside, his entire operating system has been rewritten. That fortress in his mind is still there, but now it's permanently haunted by the very shadow he welcomed in.
And in the end, this whole journey reveals a pretty profound truth. That stain of existence, his darkness, his flaws, it wasn't a problem to be fixed or a mark to be cleaned. He learns the only real mistake, the only real sin, was believing he could ever be separate from it in the first place.
And with that, the captain's log sort of turns the question back on us. His journey is over, but it leaves this one final, provocative question just hanging there. We all build our own fortresses, right? We all have things locked away. So, what honest guest is just waiting for a crack to appear at your threshold?